The static on the comms unit was a familiar lullaby, a constant whisper against the roar of the desert wind outside our armored personnel carrier. Familiar, but never comforting. Not when your job is to wrestle nightmares into steel boxes and bury them deep in the earth. My name is Agent Elias Thorne, and for the last 7 years, I've been a field agent for the SCP Foundation. My official designation is Containment Specialist, but what it really means is I'm the guy who goes in when the world starts to fray at the edges, when reality decides to cough up something truly, utterly wrong. We were rolling through the Nevada desert, a phantom convoy in the pre-dawn gloom, heading towards a cluster of coordinates that had only recently flickered onto our radar. The intel was thin, fragmented reports from isolated homesteads and bewildered state troopers about a phenomenon so bizarre it had initially been dismissed as a mass hallucination, until the disappearances started, then the screams. "All right, Thorne," Dr. Aris Thorne, my twin brother and our lead researcher on this particular assignment, crackled over the internal comms. His voice, usually so precise and academic, had an edge of weariness. "Reread the preliminary data. I want you focused." I didn't need to. Every detail was burned into my memory. SCP, as it was tentatively designated, was a spatial anomaly, a rip in the fabric of existence. It appeared as a perfect obsidian sphere, approximately 3 meters in diameter, hovering a few feet off the ground. No discernible seams, no reflections, just an absolute void. It pulsed, slowly, rhythmically, with an internal light that was somehow both there and not there, like a phantom limb of illumination. And the sound, that was the kicker. A low, resonant hum, a vibration that didn't just hit your eardrums, but seeped into your bones. A sound that spoke of unimaginable depths and ancient, waking horrors. The disappearances were the most disturbing aspect. People didn't just vanish near it, they were described as being absorbed. One moment they were there, the next, a shimmering distortion in the air, a ripple, and then nothing. No trace, no blood, no clothes, no struggle even. Just gone. And the screams that followed were not from the victims, but from the void itself. High-pitched, guttural, echoing cries that sounded like pure, unadulterated agony, and yet not quite human. "We're approaching the exclusion zone," Sergeant Miller's gruff voice cut through my thoughts. He was our team leader, a man carved from granite and cynicism, with eyes that had seen too much. Perimeter established by local law enforcement. No civilian presence. The APC rumbled to a halt. The air outside was cold, biting. As the ramp lowered, the sound hit me first. That hum. It was more prominent here. A deep thrumming that resonated in my chest. A physical pressure. It felt like standing inside a colossal, invisible bell. We stepped out, our heavy tactical gear making us lumbering figures in the dim light. The desert stretched out, flat and featureless, under a sky still bruised with pre-dawn purple. In the distance, a faint, almost imperceptible shimmer caught my eye. As we advanced, the shimmer resolved into the obsidian sphere. It hung there, utterly alien, a perfect circle of absolute black against the pale desert floor. It didn't reflect the struggling dawn light. It simply was. And that hum, it was a living thing now. It pulsed, and with each pulse, a faint ripple emanated from its surface, distorting the air around it. "Maintain a 50-meter safety perimeter," Miller barked, his voice tight. No closer until we have more data. Dr. Thorne, with his portable analysis equipment, began his readings. I watched the sphere, a cold knot tightening in my stomach. I'd seen horrors, things that would make a sane man break, but this felt different. It felt ancient, and it felt like it was watching. Suddenly, the sphere pulsed, not the slow rhythmic thrum we'd observed, but a sharp, violent convulsion. The ripples around it intensified, blurring the desert behind it. And then, the sound. It started as a whisper, a low, guttural moan that seemed to claw its way out of the very air itself. It rose, quickly, into a shriek that ripped through the silence, a sound of such pure, undiluted agony that it made every hair on my body stand on end. It wasn't just loud, it was wrong. It was the sound of a universe screaming. My hand instinctively went to the rifle slung across my chest. My teammates were similarly tense, weapons raised, eyes wide. "What the hell was that, Aris?" I demanded, my voice a strained whisper. Aris, hunched over his equipment, looked up, his face pale. My readings are going haywire. Gravitational fluctuations, localized temporal distortions. It's accelerating. As he spoke, the sphere pulsed again, faster this time, and the scream intensified, becoming a cacophony of overlapping wails. They didn't sound like human screams. They sounded like a chorus of suffering from something vast and unimaginable. And then I saw it. From the surface of the obsidian sphere, a faint, almost imperceptible ripple formed. It grew, expanding outwards like an oil stain on water. The air around it began to distort, shimmering and warping. And then, from within the blackness, something moved. It wasn't a distinct shape at first, just a deeper shadow within the void, a swirling, coiling mass. My breath hitched. This wasn't in any of the reports. "Eyes on, everyone," Miller roared. "Possible egress. Prepare to engage." The swirling mass within the sphere began to solidify, or rather, to unfold. It was slow, agonizingly so, like watching a flower bloom in reverse, but twisted, malignant. Tentacles, slick and black, thicker than a man's torso, began to push out from the sphere. They weren't smooth. They were covered in razor-sharp chitinous plates, each plate reflecting the non-light of the sphere. The screams from within the sphere reached a fever pitch, a maddening symphony of despair. And then, as the first tentacle fully extended, unfurling like a monstrous alien flag, a new sound joined the chorus. A wet, slurping, tearing noise. The sound of something being violently, horribly consumed. "It's eating something," Aris shrieked, his voice cracking. "It's feeding." My blood ran cold. The earlier screams, they weren't just suffering. They were the sound of whatever was being devoured. And the sphere, this anomaly, it wasn't just a portal. It was a mouth, a monstrous cosmic maw, and whatever was inside it was now attempting to breach our reality. The first tentacle lashed out, tearing a deep gouge in the desert floor, sending up a shower of dust and small rocks. The sheer force of it was terrifying. These things weren't just reaching, they were attacking. "Open fire!" Miller bellowed. Our automatic rifles barked, a desperate, futile chorus against the growing horror. Rounds hammered against the chitinous tentacles, sparking and ricocheting, doing nothing more than leaving faint scorch marks. These things were impervious. More tentacles emerged, twisting and thrashing, their movements disturbingly fluid despite their immense size. They were feeling around, testing the air, as if searching for something. For us. One of the tentacles, thicker than the others, ended in a bulbous, fleshy tip that pulsed with that same internal non-light. As it reached out, it brushed against one of our APCs. The metal sizzled, instantly corroding, the paint bubbling and flaking off as if exposed to acid. A sickening stench, like ozone and rotting meat, filled the air. "It's corrosive," Miller yelled. "Fall back, fall back." We scrambled, retreating as fast as our gear would allow, the horrific wails from the sphere and the slithering, tearing sounds of the tentacles pursuing us. The hum was now a grinding roar, and the entire sphere was pulsing rapidly, expanding and contracting slightly. It felt like it was breathing. "We need to contain this now," Aris yelled, his voice strained. "The localized reality distortions are increasing. If this thing fully breaches, it's not just an XK-class event. It's an Omega-level extinction." An Omega-level extinction. That was Foundation speak for the end of everything. My training kicked in. Panic was a luxury I couldn't afford. My eyes scanned the chaotic scene. The tentacles, dozens now, writhed and flailed, each one a harbinger of unspeakable doom. They were reaching higher, further, some of them curving back towards the sphere, as if pulling more of whatever was inside out. And then I saw it. Not a tentacle, but something else emerging from the void. It was slow, agonizingly so, but unmistakable. Ahead, it was immense, larger than our APC, and utterly indescribable. It was a kaleidoscope of angles and planes that shifted and rearranged themselves, like a constantly evolving optical illusion. No eyes, no discernible mouth, just a vast, undulating mass of bone-white chitin and obsidian scales, dripping with something viscous and black. And the sound. When it emerged, the wails from within the sphere suddenly changed. They became a single, unified shriek of absolute, mind-shredding agony. This was what was screaming inside. This was what was being born into our world. "It's not just a spatial anomaly," Aris whispered, his voice trembling with a morbid awe. "It's a gestational sac, and whatever is in there is trying to hatch." The thing, the entity, continued to emerge, pushing its titanic bulk through the impossible gateway. It moved with a horrifying liquid grace, its shifting form catching the scant light in sickening ways. I saw glimpses of what looked like skeletal structures, then sudden voids, then pulsating organs that glowed with that same non-light. It was a creature designed by madness itself. One of its appendages, a vast, flat limb like a shovel, slammed down onto the desert floor, sending a tremor through the ground that knocked us off our feet. The air rippled, a visible distortion, and for a moment, the very stars above us seemed to flicker, as if reality itself was struggling to comprehend this impossible presence. "We need a containment strategy now," Miller roared, struggling to his feet. "Elias, what's the plan?" My mind raced. Our standard containment protocols were for anomalies, for things that existed, however unnaturally. This was something that shouldn't. It was anathema, a living contradiction. Then, a flicker of an idea, desperate and insane, struck me. The sphere. It was the gateway. If we could disrupt it, perhaps we could sever the connection before the entity fully emerged. "The sphere!" I yelled over the din. "It's the anchor. If we can collapse it, we might be able to force it back." "How, Thorne?" Aris screamed, huddled behind a partial rock formation, his equipment forgotten. It's impervious to our weaponry. Not to conventional weaponry, no, I agreed, my voice grim. But what about anti-memetic weaponry? Aris stared at me, his eyes widening in comprehension. You're talking about Project Blindspot. It's still theoretical. It destabilizes an anomaly's conceptual anchor, makes it forget how to exist. Project Blindspot, a last-ditch experimental weapon designed by the Foundation for anomalies that defied all physical containment. It didn't destroy them physically, but conceptually. It made them cease to be. It was a terrifying concept in itself, capable of wiping an anomaly from reality, memories, and even historical records. It was only to be used in XK-class scenarios, and this, undoubtedly, was one. Miller, we need a blind spot prototype. Get it deployed, I yelled. Miller didn't hesitate. Commencing retrieval of blind spot unit Gamma 7 from secure storage. Squad Delta 3, provide cover fire. Keep those things off Thorne. The cacophony was deafening. The entity was almost halfway through the sphere, its titanic, shifting form pushing outwards, the wails of its birth tearing at the fabric of sanity. The tentacles were thrashing wildly, tearing up the desert, occasionally sweeping through our defensive positions. We were being pushed back, losing ground. The ground vibrated violently as the entity pushed more of its bulk into our reality. I could see the desert floor cracking under its immense weight, fissures opening up like hungry mouths. Unit Gamma 7 is en route. Miller's voice, though strained, was filled with a desperate hope. ETA 5 minutes. 5 minutes. It felt like an eternity. The creature was emerging faster now, its impossible geometry filling the horizon. I could feel the pressure of its presence, not just physically, but mentally. It felt like my mind was being stretched, pulled apart, as if trying to comprehend a shape that simply could not exist. One of my teammates, Agent Chen, screamed. A tentacle had whipped around, catching him, and in an instant, he was absorbed into the entity's pulsing form. Not crushed, not torn, but absorbed. A ripple on its black surface, and then he was gone. His scream echoed from within the creature, a choked, gurgling sound that was rapidly silenced. My blood ran cold. This wasn't just a monster. It was a consumer. It was the ultimate predator, and our reality was its prey. Focus fire on the point of egress, I shouted, trying to rally the remaining agents. Keep it distracted. We poured fire into the emerging monstrosity, but it was like spitting at a hurricane. The creature barely reacted, its impossible form simply shrugging off the projectiles. Its shifting surface rippled and pulsed, and I could swear I saw the faint, ghostly outlines of absorbed objects, even people, fleetingly appear on its surface before dissolving into the greater, impossible mass. Gamma 7 is on approach, Miller yelled. A specialized, heavily armored drone designed to deploy the blind spot weapon flew in low and fast, its thrusters kicking up a cloud of dust. It was small, almost insignificant against the backdrop of the emerging horror, but it carried our last hope. The entity seemed to sense it. One of its massive tentacles, with that corrosive, bulbous tip, lashed out, a black streak against the pre-dawn sky, aiming directly for the drone. No! Aris screamed. The drone swerved violently, barely avoiding the strike, but the tentacle pulled back, then lunged again, faster this time. Incoming, Miller yelled. I squeezed my eyes shut for a split second, bracing for the inevitable. But the impact never came. When I opened my eyes, I saw Agent Vance, a grizzled veteran with a 1,000-yard stare, standing firm, his anti-material rifle aimed. He'd fired, not at the tentacle, but at the base of the drone. It had barely clipped the tentacle, but it was enough to momentarily disrupt its trajectory. "Vance, you insane bastard!" Miller bellowed. But there was a flicker of something akin to admiration in his voice. The drone continued its approach, aiming for the core of the obsidian sphere. The entity let out another of its reality-tearing wails, a sound that felt like it was tearing my eardrums apart. Its tentacles thrashed even more violently, trying to swat the drone out of the air. "Almost there," Aris yelled, his eyes glued to a holographic display that was now flickering wildly. The drone reached the sphere, hovering directly in front of it. A panel on its underside opened, revealing a single pulsating crystal, glowing with an unnatural, sickly green light. The blind spot weapon was armed. "Firing in 3, 2, 1, mark!" Aris screamed. A blinding flash of green light erupted from the drone, engulfing the obsidian sphere. It wasn't an explosion. It was an implosion of existence. The sphere didn't shatter. It simply unwound. Like a tapestry being pulled apart thread by thread, it began to unravel, its perfect blackness dissolving into shimmering motes of light that faded into nothingness. The entity, half emerged, let out a final, impossibly loud shriek, a sound of pure cosmic outrage and despair. Its colossal form began to blur, its impossible geometry losing its coherence. The tentacles, previously so solid and terrifying, became translucent, then wavered, like smoke in a strong wind. But it wasn't instantaneous. The blind spot weapon worked by unraveling conceptual anchors, and this creature, this ancient horror, had deep roots. It fought back, its colossal form thrashing, trying to reassert itself. The ground continued to quake, and the air still hummed with its dying agony. I watched, mesmerized and terrified, as the entity recoiled, its vast, formless bulk being drawn back into the vanishing void. Its impossible head, with its shifting planes, seemed to look directly at me for a split second, and in that moment, I felt something alien and ancient brush against my mind, a profound, infinite hatred, a primal hunger, and a promise of return. Then, with a final shuddering gasp that felt like the universe itself was exhaling, the last vestige of the entity was sucked back into the fading green light. The obsidian sphere winked out of existence, leaving behind only the churned-up desert, the stench of ozone and decay, and an unnerving silence. The hum was gone. The screams were gone. Only the wind and the ragged breathing of my remaining team filled the air. We stood there, trembling, our rifles still raised, staring at the empty space where unimaginable horror had been moments before. The sun, finally cresting the horizon, cast long, distorted shadows across the scarred earth. Miller slowly lowered his rifle. "Is it gone?" he whispered, his voice hoarse. Aris, slumped against the APC, ran a hand through his sweat-soaked hair. "The conceptual anchor is severed. It's been nullified, wiped from existence. It'll never breach this reality again. Not in that form anyway." He paused, then added, almost to himself, "But something that massive, that primal, it leaves a mark." He was right. Even now, hours later, as the cleanup crews descended and the amnestics were deployed to any civilian witnesses, though mercifully there were few, I could still feel it. The silence was too loud, the light too bright. The desert felt empty, yes, but also hollowed out, as if something vital had been torn from it. And the echoes, I still hear them, In the quiet moments when the world is still, I hear the low, resonant hum, a phantom vibration in my bones. And sometimes, in the darkest hours of the night, when sleep offers no escape, I hear the screams, the impossible, alien screams of something being born and something else being devoured, and that final silent promise of return from the impossible head. The Foundation classifies SCP as neutralized. The official report states that a spatial anomaly was contained. No mention of the entity, no mention of the birth. It's better that way. Some horrors are so profound, so fundamentally incompatible with our understanding of reality, that even the knowledge of them could unravel the sanity of mankind. But I know, and Aris knows. We saw what shouldn't exist, and we forced it back into the void. But the void is vast, and its denizens are patient. And sometimes, when I close my eyes, I still see that perfect obsidian sphere, pulsing with non-light, waiting to birth something new, something worse, into our fragile world. My name is Agent Elias Thorne, and I'm an SCP field agent containing what shouldn't exist. And every single day, I know it's just a matter of time before it tries to come back. And next time, it might remember.